topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon, Orlando. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show, where for the last 16 years, we have brought you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. This is the last Thursday of the month. That means K. Bender Rimbaum, Orlando, and a guy who has just made this show take off, board-certified attorney, Alan Swartzide. Afternoon, Alan.
Thank you, Steve. And I'm going to go ahead and not mention that to my partner, Robert Kay, or my colleague, Kirsten Henza. I don't think they would appreciate that one, but I do.
Hey, listen, it's so nice saying board certified.
Now apparently there's another certification that's maybe being created that I might be pursuing, which is alternative dispute resolution, so mediation, because that's another thing that my partner and I both do, and we'll see. But yes, it is very nice to be able to say, we have 9 attorneys that are board certified in this area of law, and I am one of them.
Well, I also have to compliment you for all of you who are watching on YouTube right now. I love your background.
I got to be honest. I have no idea where this background came from. I'm thanking Jeff Solomon because I presume it was him. But for some reason, I couldn't find the main one that we usually use that I have on Zoom, and this is what I came up with. So I'm going to just thank Jeff.
Hey, thank God for Jeff Solomon. So listen, I was looking at our YouTube numbers are skyrocketing, but I'm finding out we're getting so many new people. Tell people about K. Bender Rimbaum.
Excuse me. Sure. So, I mentioned we've got 9 attorneys board certified in this area of law. We've also got 1 board certified in construction law. Representing community associations is pretty much all the firm's done since the 1990s. 25 total attorneys, all well-versed in community association issues. Offices here in Orlando, I manage the Winter Springs office. We've got 3 attorneys and 3 staff in the office looking for a litigator. So if anyone is looking for a new role, please reach out. But we've also got offices in Pompano Beach, which is basically West Fort Lauderdale is the way that I refer to it, as well as Palm Beach Gardens, and Kirsten's out in Tampa. So again, if you're happy with your current association attorney, that's great. Stick with them. But if you're not happy, you don't know who they are because you've never been able to communicate with them, or you just need a second opinion on anything, that's kind of where we come in. Anything from start to finish, collection, covenant enforcement, amendments, day-to-day guidance, whatever you need. I'd say 99% or so of what you might need, we've got you covered.
Well, I got to tell you, what we do with this show is we have our listeners write in their questions every month. And as you saw this month, we have got a ton of questions. But I got to tell you, we got a lot of just emails, people going that this was the first time Tallahassee has not passed any new legislation for HOA or condos. Is that right?
I don't know about first time, but it's the first time in about 5 years that I'm aware of that they've not destroyed us too much. The good news, and I will say it's good news, I call it good news, House Bill 657, which was what I call the HOA Terminator Bill, It did pass the Florida House, but the session ended, the legislative session ended before it could reach the Senate, before it could reach the governor. So as of now, it's dead. Now, my understanding is that the intent is to have a special legislative session. My understanding is further that this is not one of the issues that the legislature intends to address during that special session. So all we can do as of now is pray that, as you mentioned, Steve, the legislature left us alone for a year and we get to just kind of digest what's gone on for the last few years. And, hopefully some of the fixes come in next year for the things that happened the last few years. But I can appreciate that the legislature kind of let HOAs breathe for a year and is now giving, maybe inadvertently giving HOAs and condos and co-ops the opportunity to just say, all right, let's allow the courts to kind of digest and figure out how to interpret the laws that have come out since, I think it's really 2022, when the reactive laws pertaining to the Surfside building collapse came out, that we really seen you'll excuse the term, but kind of a sea change in the way that condos and HOAs are supposed to be operating. And so, it's funny that you first start by mentioning this, because in my head, this was the first thing I almost wanted to interrupt before you got to ask a question, because I wanted to clarify for everyone. Yes, the legislature let us live for a year.
Yes,
they do great.
They were happy. People are happy.
Yeah, well, and some people are not so happy because they really wanted to see the ease of terminating HOAs. And again, I think that was looking at 1% of the circumstances and presuming that everyone is like that 1% and that we need to just completely do away with the idea. I won't go into the reasons I thought that legislation would have been a bad idea beyond saying, who takes care of everything when the HOA is gone? Do you really think the city or the county is going to do the job that the HOA was doing, or do it nearly as well or as frequently? And my answer is probably not. Now, there are some cities and counties that do a ton and do a great job. I just did a presentation regarding governing documents for the city of Orlando the other day, along with Orange County. And I think, again, some cities and counties do a fantastic job. They do a lot of work. They work hard, but some don't. And some don't consider code enforcement to be the most important part of their job. And if that's the case that you're going to look at, I don't know that it's a great idea to have no one that's obligated to govern these, especially if you look at like the stormwater areas. Okay, so we'll just have a bunch of flooding now. Great. That's what we're looking for, is doing away with the Karens, but now all of a sudden our communities flood because no one maintains the stormwater, the stormwater facilities. So I'll leave it at that. But yes, very good point, Steve. Nothing that's directly HOA or condo specific passed this year. It's going to make it a really interesting year for our legal update classes, because I don't know what the hell we're going to teach. But, we'll look at, I guess, some case law that's come out over the last year and some of the tangential issues, because there are some corporate issues and some non-condo and HOA relevant issues that we might add in. But I don't see how that's going to be a 2-hour class like it has been historically for this year, because we're just not used to, anymore, at least, not used to there being nothing that is wholly, I was going to say something, but I'll skip it because we're on the air. Basically, good Lord, what are they doing here, and how do we make sure that we do it right? And so that just didn't happen this year. And it's from my perspective, a good thing that we can spend another year fixing, the way that we're dealing with some of the new statutes that have come out over the last 3-4 years. But it's also what do we include this year in our legal update? So I'll look forward to discussing that with my partners, and we'll be teaching that class at some point, probably in August or September.
Alan, I cannot even imagine these not having an HOA association with all that has to be done. I can't even imagine that.
Well, I think the biggest problem in not having it is not having it, because there are plenty of places in Florida that don't have HOAs.
Yes.
There are plenty in
Right.
Orlando area. There are plenty in Orange County, Osceola. I mean, you go to Lake, a lot of areas have no HOA, and especially up in Ocala. There are plenty of areas in Florida that don't have HOAs. The problem is when they're laid out to have one, and you've got, again, stormwater, you've got other amenities of this community. I mean, if you've got a basketball court, a tennis court, the county and the city don't want to take that over. They don't want their residents paying taxes for something that's adjacent to a whole bunch of homes that they now have the obligation to maintain. So the question then becomes, what are we going to do? Are we going to do away with the HOA, but everyone still has to pay in to maintain and insure these items? What are we going to do here? And then if they don't pay, do we have the ability to collect that money? Or do we just get a money judgment that gets eliminated in bankruptcy by anyone who chooses to say, I don't want to pay? So it becomes a big mess if you have it laid out as an HOA. I don't have a problem with properties that aren't in one. But if you've already laid it out that way, then you need to have something other than there's no longer an HOA as to how you deal with all of those amenities, the things that the association maintained and insured, et cetera.
One of the articles there's a lot of articles out there, as you know. One of the articles I read, it was mostly centering around now you would be able to file a lawsuit against you're not filing it. You wouldn't have, if you don't have an association, you wouldn't be filing lawsuits, but they would mainly be saying it's easier to take a property to court. That was the whole mix of the whole article. And there's so much more to it, isn't there?
There is. I mean, I don't know if they're trying to say that it's easier to take a lot and file a lawsuit against the owner if there's no HOA. I mean, that's insane to me, because the HOA statute explicitly says that an owner has the right to sue another owner for violation of the declaration, even if that doesn't necessarily impact the neighboring owner. So I don't really understand what the basis would be to even begin to make the argument that it's easy to sue your neighbor if there's no HOA involved. Now, to say you can't sue the HOA anymore, yeah, okay, because it doesn't exist anymore. But you have a better right, if you're operating under the HOA statute, to actually be able to sue your neighbor. Not that you necessarily want to, but under the HOA statute, I think it's 720-305, it explicitly says you have the opportunity to sue your neighbor. So I don't understand that argument at all. Maybe I need to find that article and read it. Maybe I'm missing something, but it makes no sense to me based on the way you've described it.
But nothing's going to happen for at least a year. Is that right?
That's what we're hoping. Again, the legislature has expressed the interest, I'll put it that way, in having special sessions. There's no explicit intent to consider this issue during those special sessions, but I'll use the phrase that my favorite law professor used back in the day, and that a couple of my favorite colleagues use regularly. Nothing is safe when the legislature is in session. So you never know what they're going to decide when they set up these special sessions. Are they going to hit these issues, or are they going to let it go until next year, as you mentioned? I don't have the answer. Fortunately and unfortunately for everyone involved, I'm not a legislator. And I say fortunately because I guarantee you I'd screw it up just as badly. I do my best, but there are always going to be things that the legislature isn't able to think of unless they ask multiple attorneys who are practicing in this field on a regular basis. And over the last few years, it seems that they've just held back a little bit more in doing that.
Don't you wonder if any of these legislatures are part of a community association, if they even know what a community association is?
I don't question whether they're part of a community association. I question whether they've ever served on the board. And the reason I say that is lot of legislation comes from people who are angry that things happen to them. So, for example, the notice of late assessment that came about a couple of years ago, that's a new requirement where you can't have an attorney send a demand letter for unpaid assessments until this letter is sent and expires, and you can't charge any attorney's fees for preparing it. That's because someone got a demand letter that said, hey, you owe all these assessments, but you also owe a couple $100 in attorney's fees. And a legislator got mad about it and said there should be a notice that goes out before the association can charge you any attorney's fees, that you should get an official notice that's statutory in nature. So this got added. So again, I think that it's more likely that there are people that are seeing things happening firsthand or hearing about it second or third or fourth hand and just presuming that there needs to be legislation to fix it, when in reality, it's already wrong. It's already something you're not supposed to do under the Florida statutes. It's just that no one does anything about it. So if people continued actually enforcing the statutes and the governing documents as they're drafted and as intended, we probably wouldn't need new legislation every year to try and fix problems that don't exist.
Your K. Bender Rimbaum offers a lot of educational programs. It's amazing the amount of free programs you offer. I got to tell you, we've gotten so many letters that people have said they love the way you present the firm. They love the way that you explain things. And I got to tell you, it's so important because, Alan, I was looking the other day because we're going to have some community association law firms in other states around the country. And you look at their website and they bankruptcy, we do personal injury, we do community association, we do business. I mean, they have a whole list of areas they cover. Well, K. Bender, you really just concentrate in one area.
We do, and that's what enables us to ensure that everyone in the firm actually knows how to do this well. The bottom line is you're going to have people in any law firm that are more and less knowledgeable than others. But if you focus your practice on one area of law, then everyone in the practice gets to know it really well. And, we all just think that that's a very important thing. We don't want to be a family law firm that says we also happen to do community association law. You really want someone who specializes in the issues involved in what you've got going on. Now, that's also why we've got someone who's board certified in construction law. Because if someone has a construction issue, I don't want to go to the guy that's never dealt with a construction issue. But we know that enough of our communities have those issues pop up. So, we have Jeff Green, who I trust inherently with anything construction related or litigation related because he runs our litigation team. And I've known the guy for 15 years. He does a great job. But, that's back to the original point. I think it's important to focus on something so that you can know it and do it well rather than just being a jack of all trades. And I never wanted to be involved in what they call a door firm. And what that means is if there's business that walks in the door, we'll take it. It's not, we'll do whatever comes in. And because of that, we have to throw a bunch of different areas of law on our website. This is what we do, period. And being able to say that to potential clients and current clients, I think it goes a long way. And at least I hope it does.
Kind of nice also being one of the largest in Florida too.
It doesn't hurt. I won't use the bigger is better lines and all the other Morgan & Morgan billboards that you see all over the place. We don't necessarily focus on being the biggest. We just try and make sure that everyone that's here is going to be good at their job.
And Alan, I want you to explain, because we don't talk about this every show, how important customer service is to you.
Well, there's a reason that we've got every single call that anyone makes to our office gets routed to the front desk unless you have one of our direct extensions, which we give out freely. The bottom line is we want to make sure that people feel taken care of not just like they called the lawyer. And I don't ever want to be referred to as the lawyer. I want someone to say, oh, yeah, I called Alan, he took care of me, or I texted Alan, he took care of it. Frequently there are managers that'll reach out, and we're not even working with them on that project, but it's hey, what does the statute or case law say about this? As long as I don't have to review governing documents, it's a different story. But, there are so many answers that, being someone who focuses on this area of law or just in my head, I'm happy to answer and just say, hey, here's how you should deal with this. I do think that one of the things that distinguishes us from a lot of other law firms, at least for my office here in the Orlando area, is that we've got a 1 business day turnaround time for any client communications, potential client communications. If you want to work with us and you reach out, you're never going to have to wait more than 1 business day to have at least an acknowledgement that we're working on what you've got. I frequently find that people switch from other firms because they can't get a hold of their attorney for 2 or 3 weeks. And then after 2 or 3 weeks, it's, oh yeah, I got your email, I'll get to work on that soon. So, when you talk about customer service, it's not just working for the clients. It's making sure that people feel like they're cared about and they're not just a number or a billing entry. And I think we do that pretty well. I think there are plenty of firms that do. I just think that it's more of a focal point for our practice to make sure that clients understand we're about the relationship, not just the case.
Well, I know why they put you in charge of the Orlando office, Alan.
I didn't.
You know what? We're gonna go to break, and we come back. You've got a lot of classes coming up, don't you?
We do. We always do.
We're gonna go over that, and then I promise everybody we'll get to your questions. Tell people, first of all, how they can reach any of your offices.
Sure. Well, the front desk is at 954-928-0680. That's for any office. And if you want to reach me directly, it's as@kbrlegal.com. If you want our 800 number, it's 1-800-974-0680. So same thing.
And you've got the greatest website too.
Well, we're working on it. We try. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to break. We'll be right back. We're here with board certified attorney Alan Swartzide. We'll be right back.
K. Bender Rembaum is a full-service community association law firm dedicated to the representation of community associations throughout Florida. On kbrlegal.com, you can learn more about their offices in Pompano Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, Orlando, Tampa, as well as throughout Miami-Dade by appointment. Several K. Bender Rembaum attorneys are board-certified specialists in condominium and plan development law and assist clients with all matters of community association legal issues while keeping them up to date on new developments that affect their associations. K. Bender Rembaum is also a well-known provider of free legal education for managers and board members. Contact K. Bender Rembaum today by calling 800-974-0680. That's 800-974-0680 to reach any of their locations. You can also visit them online at kbrlegal.com or write to them at info@kbrlegal.com.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
And we are back. This is our last Thursday of the month where we do our K. Bender Rembaum Orlando show. We also do a Tampa area show, and we do a South Florida show. K. Bender Rembaum, it's so amazing. And I want, before I even go to the classes coming up, I don't do this very often. I want to thank Jeff Solomon. He puts this whole thing together and makes sure everything works right and gets us all the classes coming up. And boy, he is so good at what he does. And I always forget to thank him, but I consider this a thank you. But so we're here with attorney Alan Swartzide. You've got classes coming up, and they're all free, aren't they?
They are, and we always do. We've got a bunch coming up this month, a bunch coming up next month. I guess we've only got, a couple more days this month, but we've still got at least one more. That'll be on March 27th, which is tomorrow, by the way, updating your governing documents. That's the class I just taught for the city of Orlando earlier this week. That's for HOA and CAM credit. So if you need your 4 or 8 hours as an HOA director, that's at 10:30 a.m. tomorrow with Emily Gannon. There is still time to sign up. So just go on our website at kbrlegal.com, click on the calendar, and you can sign up for any one of these classes. Next one's going to be April 8th. This is with my partner, Jeff Rembaum. He's on a panel of industry experts. I don't know who else is on it, but he's an industry expert in my opinion. So there you go. That's going to be at noon on April 8th, and it's before, during, and after the storm. Board's operational playbook. I suspect that's going to be a hurricane presentation to get everyone ready for the fun season coming up. We've got our legal update, and there was some significant information in this one for CAMs and condo board members. That'll be April 15th via Zoom with Danielle Brennan in our Palm Beach Gardens office. That's at 2 p.m. Now, understand the HOAs, there were no real changes this year. So if you're just in an HOA, you can go ahead and attend, but you're not really getting much out of it, and you won't get your HOA credit. Condo board members, this is the one educational credit you need per year other than your board certification class every few. On April 17th, we've got an HOA board member certification with Kirsten Henza in our Tampa office at 10 a.m. That's April 17th. April 27th, we've got condo board member certification. That's at noon on the 22nd. We're doing that one with Folio Management. That's with Kirsten again. Apparently, she is the board certification queen next month. And some guy named Alan Swartzide that you might have heard of is going to be joining her for that one. And then finally, although this is not an extensive or exclusive list, I will be, along with a couple of our other people from the Orlando office, at the Orlando Condo and HOA Expo. That's going to be on April 28th. I believe it's free for board members, maybe for CAMs. The booths are going to be going from 10 to 3 on that day. My mediation class will be from 9 to 10. I'll be teaching that one live and in person. So if you've always wanted to meet me, come on by. And I'll also be teaching our legal update. I am hopeful that April 28th is the last time I'll be teaching this year's legal update from 2:30 to 4, because everyone wants to spend the end of their day an hour and a half of legal updates at the Condo and HOA Expo. So that is what we've got coming up. We've got a bunch of other classes coming up this month.
Hey,
those
Alan,
are the ones that mostly impact the Orlando area.
have you gotten used to those 4-hour HOA board member certifications?
Well, see, we're smart enough to do a 2.5-hour HOA, but the condo, we split it between 2 people and one of us signs off. So we'll have one person show up halfway in, and we just kind of swap off. That way no one needs to do 4 hours except the attendees. Sorry, guys. And Jeff.
Exactly.
Jeff around for 4 hours.
Well, let's get to the questions. We sure have a lot of them. Jack in Orlando, I need clarity on the new rule regarding length of time one can serve on a condo board.
Okay. So there's no law when it comes to HOA how long you can serve as a consecutive term on your board unless your bylaws say something about it. In a condo, there's a statute that passed in July 2018 that says you can only serve for 8 consecutive years. Now, I won't get into Kaufman language like we have to every single time I'm on the show, but I will say that, depending on language in your governing documents, blah, 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 the purpose of this law was to have people not serving a permanent term on their condo boards. It says that you can only serve for 8 years consecutively. The legislature and everyone else has decided that that is 8 years, starting with terms that are pertinent to July 1st, 2018, which means that in July of this year, that's when this will kick in. Now, I think the clarification that you're asking for, and by the way, it's this year because that's 8 years from the date that the statute took effect. Okay, so the problem with it is that it's not really clear whether you can start a term that began before July and then have to come off the board, whether you can finish out that term, which I don't think is the case, or if you can't even start a term that includes through July if it's going to reach the 8-year point. My suggestion is it's not really clear. What my opinion is, you're probably safe if you don't serve for a term that doesn't go more than 8 years, effective as of July 1st of this year. So in other words, if you've been on the board for 8 years as of July 1st, because of the date this statute actually passed, it's probably time to drop off so that you don't have anyone challenging whether or not you're eligible to continue serving on the board. Now, I'm going to give some bad legal advice on your radio show, Steve. As a practical matter, if you don't think anyone's going to challenge this, maybe wait to see if anyone does, and then decide that as soon as someone does challenge it, you'd be willing to drop off or you'd fight it. So the answer is the statute's not 100% clear, but I think you're probably safe as long as you're not serving for more than 8 consecutive years to the day starting on July 1st. Excuse me. What else have we got, Steve?
So let me say this. First of all, you would not believe all the letters. I don't know why we get them, but we get letters, people complaining. And I just want to say this. You know what? If you're not happy with what's going on with your association, run for your board. Right, Alan?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the way to control what's going on. It's the way to power, so to speak. You know, when I teach a board certification class, I explain 90% or more of the decisions that are made for your association are made by the board without the members. I won't say without their input, but without their vote. So the members get to speak at board meetings, but the board is the only one that gets to vote. And most decisions are made at board meetings, not member meetings. So if you really want to have a say, you really want to fix things, you got to do it from the inside. And so, yeah, I agree. Try and get on the board if you care enough to sit there and complain, especially if you're complaining about things that don't directly impact you and you're just not happy about them. Get on the board and fix it. Now, I understand that's a huge undertaking. Being a volunteer director of an HOA or a condo is a big job. But you can't, it's kind of like when there's an election coming up and you don't vote. You can't really complain about the outcome if you choose not to show up.
Exactly. You know, and they also want to know, do you feel like there's good qualifications a person should have to run for the board?
Well, I mean, be willing to do what you're legally obligated to do is step one. You know, if you're not willing to take all the educational classes you're required to take, if you're not willing to try and learn the materials taught during those classes, I don't think you'd be a great director because you don't really care enough about the job to do the job.
Right.
Now, that may sound a little callous, but the reality is that if you aren't willing to spend in a condo a total of 5 hours maybe per year, making sure that you're up to date, and after you've taken your board cert 1 hour a year, if you're in an HOA and you're not willing to do a maximum of 10 hours a year to try and make sure that you are running that business correctly, maybe don't run it. And if you're just upset, you know, kind of let it go. Or, you know, I don't understand people that complain about having to take these classes. I've got the board of a massive community in Daytona that actually asked me to teach them independently their classwork, because they have to take 8 hours a year plus a board cert whenever they need it. And they just have me teaching the class. They all get together in one of their big rooms, and I don't know whether they have drinks or not because they're not on camera, and that's fine with me. But as long as they're listening and paying attention and hopefully asking some good questions, that's the whole purpose of this, is to get educated, to understand how to do the job. If you're not willing to do that, don't take the job. The other thing is, don't have a personal agenda. I'm getting on the board because someone sent me a violation notice. Not really the best reason to serve as a director of an HOA. Okay. Maybe, it'd be important to learn what your governing documents require before you move in, although I recognize that no one does that. And Jeff was kind enough just to text me just now, don't take it personally. Having the ability, and I know I get a little animated on the show sometimes, but when I'm with clients, when I'm mediating, I'm even keel. I don't yell at anyone. I can take criticism that might frustrate me, but this is the way that I speak. It's not, I can't believe you would do that. It's none of that. If you're going to use flowery language and you're going to be aggressive towards people, you're not the right person to be on the board. Maybe that's the opposite of the question that was asked, but I actually just did, for a management company, an entire class for an hour on some of the things that bad board members do. And I thought it went pretty well. Everyone kind of got a lot out of it. It's just it's harder to do the job well than to sit and take it easy and understand that people are going to hate you. People are going to hate what you're doing, no matter how good you do, because unlike the people that I'm describing as good board members, they don't really try to understand. All they're going to look at is, what are my assessments, and am I getting violation notices and collection notices? That's all people generally care about. Does the building look okay if you're in a condo? Do the amenities look okay? That's it. So you could do a terrible job, but if everything looks okay and you don't send out a violation notice, everyone will love you. Until they find out that the lack of maintenance, because you wanted to keep assessments low, means that they have to pay 10 to 15 times as much because you waited a while to do that preventative maintenance. So people that are willing to spend money, unfortunately, is another, I hate to say it, but a good characteristic for a board member.
Let's go to Trish in Orlando. Is a NDA something a board should consider for members, or is it an ethics policy more appropriate?
An NDA is a non-disclosure agreement, and anything that an association does, unless it's privileged and discussed with counsel or a discussion about employees, is required to be done in the open. So those are kind of contradictory terms. You can't really have an NDA for a community association because any document that's created is an official record, and most likely, unless it's one of the exempt documents described in the Florida statutes, it's got to be open for inspection by any member. So an NDA is something that candidly just doesn't work for a community association.
Okay. Barry in Sanford, what criteria do you recommend for an HOA to foreclose on a house?
Do they owe you money? If yes, foreclose. It's seriously that simple, because when you don't use that as the criterion, and I'm being a little facetious, how long has it been delinquent? My perspective is once that debt is 60 to 90 days past due, they're not coming clean until you send out your demands. Now, keep in mind, when you say to foreclose, that's a different story, but you got to get that process started, because otherwise all you're doing is letting that accumulate, letting that balance increase, and making it harder for the person to pay that off. And as I mentioned earlier, your first statutory notice is one that you can't charge attorney's fees for. So why not send it out? It's basically a courtesy notice, even though it's required by law. So I don't see a reason to wait more than 60, 90 days to get that notice out. And if people don't pay within 30 days after that, then they're at least 90, 120 days past due. And why would you not send that over to council and keep that collection process moving until you get paid? The important thing to keep in mind when it comes to collection of your delinquent assessments, those assessments are based on your budget. And unless you have a huge anticipated bad debt category in your budget, every time you don't collect an assessment, you're basically telling all of your members, we don't care whether we have enough money to do what the association needs throughout the course of the year. We're going to just go ahead and ignore it. And what eventually happens when the next budget comes around is you do have that bad debt, and you're now putting it on all of the other members to pay for this person that's not paying. So I would be much more inclined to say, if it's 60 or 90 days, start that process. Now, if the owner reaches out and says, I want a payment plan, yeah, absolutely. As long as the timeline is reasonable and there are real consequences if they default, meaning they don't pay on time, absolutely. I'm fully in favor of having your attorney draft up a proposed payment plan agreement that you can then use as a form anytime someone wants a payment plan going forward before it reaches the attorney stage. That way, anyone that wants one, as long as it's a reasonable time that the board agrees to, they're going to get it. And you'll get your money, or you'll be able to foreclose a lot easier because there are consequences for a default. But if you choose not to do that collection work, all you're doing is hurting all of your members and the corporation that, again, you're supposed to be running as a business. You can't decide based on what you think of each individual circumstance. There's a legal term for that. It's selective enforcement. So if you take every collection matter on a case-by-case basis, you're basically setting yourself up for failure. I recommend that every community have a collection policy that says when you're going to start collection, what you're going to do, etc., what interest and late fees accrue, what settlement terms you'd be willing to accept for a payment plan, and just follow it to a T. That way, not only is it easy to make sure that you're not messing that up, but you also don't need a board vote every single time someone goes delinquent, so you're not holding up that process. So that's a lot of words to say, collect your debts.
So, Alan, since Alan's got, I'm gonna read this because Alan's got such low self-esteem, and he needs to hear stuff like this. Penny in Orlando said, "Our board all watches your show each month. We really appreciate your seminars. I love the new HOA certification classes." No question. I just wanted to read that, kind of boost your ego a little.
All right. Well, thank you, Penny, if you're actually out there. And thank you, Steve, if Penny's not out there.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to Jim and Pompano. Can we ask for too much as a board in regards to support animals? We haven't had a support animal question in a while.
So we've got an entire class on fair housing and emotional support and service animals. And the short answer is you can definitely ask for too much information. Generally speaking, if the condition, the disability that the person suffers that requires that support animal is obvious, you can ask about the disability. If the need for the animal is obvious, let's say, for example, it's actually a seeing eye dog, you can tell the person's blind and that they're using the dog to be able to maneuver. Those are the types of things you really can't ask for unless you have reason to believe that they actually can see. If you don't have that obvious disability, obvious connection between the disability and the need for the accommodation that the person's asking for, usually that's the animal, then you can ask for a physician's note that is reliable, written by someone who's qualified to actually diagnose the disability and the need for the animal and give the prescription, so to speak, for the animal. And if that says that they have a disability, that the person that made the diagnosis is qualified to do it, and that the disability causes a need for that animal or whatever accommodation is requested, that causes the need for it. Not that it would be helpful, by the way, that it is a need in order to properly use the facilities and have an equal opportunity and equal enjoyment of those facilities that you offer at your community or of their property, then you have to allow it without asking for more. What I would really suggest is have your attorney prepare kind of a step-by-step guide of how to evaluate these disability-related requests. I call it a disability request policy, and that's another one that I think everyone should have, is just a little step-by-step guide, some forms that people can fill out if they want to make it easier for the board to evaluate these requests. But you keep in mind, you can't require anyone to fill out a specific form for this purpose. So it can get a little bit more complicated than most other issues. The other problem with getting it wrong is that this is kind of like bankruptcy. Okay, it's intended to benefit the person that allegedly has a disability. So if someone says, I have a disability, I needed my animal, they didn't allow me to have it, or they asked too many questions, going back to the actual original question here, that's called discrimination. Now, even if you prove that it wasn't discrimination, unless you can prove that the owner or the resident or whoever it was requested the accommodation in bad faith, meaning they had no basis to know or no basis to believe that the association was wrong in denying this thing, you don't get your fees and costs back even if you win. And the problem with that is sometimes you can get up to 10, 15, if it's a lawsuit, up to 50, 100 grand. And even if you win, you lose because you're out that money. So my suggestion is to be very careful when people make those requests. There is a statute that says if you fabricate the information, that is a crime in and of itself. But, you know, the bottom line is, yeah, people are still making baseless requests for service and support animals. And so, but you do have to be very careful about the way that you evaluate them and the way that you respond to them and how quickly you respond. Because keep in mind, failing to respond within even a week or two could be considered the equivalent of saying no. So at least acknowledge it and say, we got to get an opinion from our attorney. We're going to take a look at that. And if we need anything else, we'll conduct, I always forget the phrase, but interactive process. We'll conduct an interactive process to make sure that we give you every opportunity to demonstrate that there's a need for this. So again, a lot of words to say, yes, you can ask for too much.
Got about a minute left. I want to get, this is from our chat line. I have a question. Can we fine homeowners for parking in the street or on the grass, even if they used the limited guest parking for their personal, I guess, cars?
That depends. Do you control the grass? Do you control the streets? If the city or the county control the roads, you don't have any control over them yourself if they're maintaining those roads. If you're in a community where the roads are wholly owned, then you have to have actual rules that say you can't park that way on the street. But if the answer is you have those rules, you control those areas, or the areas are part of the lot for the grassy area that you're talking about, then yes, you can probably fine for that. The statutes that came into play in 2024 for HOAs, this doesn't apply to condos, but that only talks about trucks and commercial vehicles being parked in the driveway and surrounding areas. So if you're parking on the grass, that's not the violation that you're parking a truck. It's that you're parking on the grass. So that statute has no application to the circumstances you're talking about.
Alan, they just cannot stump you. You are always right there with the right answers. Tell people how they can reach your office.
Sure. Again, we've got 954-928-0680. That'll reach the front desk. You can call and ask for my office if you'd like to speak with me. But the easiest way to reach me, because I'm often out of the office, is my email, which is, again, my partner, Jeff Rembaum, made sure it was very easy. S as in Schwartzide at kbrlegal.com.
Well, and we do our Tampa show the last Tuesday of the month at the same time. And we also do South Florida the first Thursday of the month, same time. Alan, you're the best, man. I'm so glad we have you. And we'll see you next month.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks a lot. And thank you to everyone for listening.
Thanks. That's attorney Alan Swartzide. Wow. I'm telling you, folks, if you are a HOA or condo association, K. Bender Rimbaum is one of the finest firms in the state of Florida. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back in with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.